Wait. We're good. Had to pause the music. Okay. Hi, everyone. As usual, I'm going to be finishing up the marketing as people are joining in. And welcome to our Wednesday live stream today. I think this should be a good one. How about you, Joe?
I am pumped.
I am too. I think we'll get a lot of eye-opening questions.
I can't think of any more puns.
I can't either while I'm writing.
What's there's a part of the eye, or you're gonna give me a corny? Is that one?
I'll give you a B- on that. Or I should give you a C. Because I see the pun. There you go. Alright, to everyone that is joining in right now, we actually have, do you want to come out really quick? So we actually have a surprise as Joe is now living in the same place that I am, and we have been calling it the Art House. So we've been like in an incubator just trying to make our art as best as we can and will be doing for the next couple of months. Or he might be stuck.
I'm trying to find.
I swear it's not that big of a house.
This house is huge.
And today, if you haven't seen the marketing post, we're going to be talking about drawing eyes, and I think that's why I'm most excited because the eyes are probably my favorite thing to draw ever. I've always very much had an affinity for drawing them and how I think they can provoke an emotion just from like a tilt of the upper lip or how open they are, or even the color. It's really interesting in playing with the way that the highlight works on it. So we're going to talk about all that. So if you guys have any questions about eyes, stock them up, and we will address them.
Longest walk ever.
Everyone, welcome Joe.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Where is it? It's over there.
That little dot right there. All right, so I'm pretty excited. Get back there. Come on.
My cake.
All right, so I guess we will officially start it now. Joe, are you ready?
Okay.
Okay. Hi everyone, welcome to today's Concept Cookie and CG Cookie live stream. We do these every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Time. And I know you guys have told me last time, since the daylight savings kind of screwed it up a little bit, we tried to remind everyone that we're starting an hour early for people outside of the United States. And today we're going to be focusing on eyes. And I'm going to be joined by Joe Chico, as you just saw. He's the moderator for today.
Hello.
And if you have any questions, as always, if they don't even pertain to what I'm working on, feel free to ask, and we will do our best to answer as many as we can. We usually get a little overloaded, so we try to answer them as quickly as we can, but still giving a quality answer to the best of our ability. So, okay, I think I'm ready to go. The other things I wanted to send out really quick are, if you didn't see my post, we were just sent the Beginner's Guide to Digital Painting in Photoshop, their character book. I'm really excited to do a review on this one, and I'm actually going to be starting the video book review series probably next week. So if book review or just art books in general are something that intrigue you, stay tuned for that. I mean, I always feel like art books are like the gold in this world, like the one thing I can get really excited about. But the first one I'm going to do is the Final Fantasy XIV one. I don't know if I've said it on a live stream, but this is probably the best art book I think I've ever seen. It's so good, and I would recommend anyone that is not only looking to be a character artist, but like any type of artist I feel can learn and pick up from their quality in their design work, and I'm really excited to review this one. All right, I'm going to switch it over here, and let's start drawing eyes. All right, so, oops. Oh, yeah, I guess you get to see a preview of the exercise. And if you, actually, this is a good coincidence. If you are curious about doing the exercise that's up right now, it's exercise 37, I believe. It's on doing master studies. So this is something that I think anyone can pick up some new tricks from doing, so I would recommend checking it out. So I'm going to go file new though. Okay, blank canvas. So the first thing I think I'm going to just start sketching some eyes and then maybe answer a few of these starting questions as well as seeing all the hellos from where you guys are from. So Joe, take the wheel.
Okay, I'll start with the hellos. Uh, the Solid Moose. That's actually a really awesome name. It says, "Greetings from Missouri."
Greetings.
Um,
I'd try to list as many as you can.
okay. We got someone from Denmark,
What's their name?
Phoenix. Oh, Andrea? Andrea?
Hello.
Sydney from Phoenix. Got some hellos from New Jersey, from Lotus Nevermore.
Oh, if that's a returning name, I recognize that.
Uh, yeah, and then a bunch of hays, like
Well,
from
hello.
Jana and Micah. And yeah. Oh, and Erica says, "Same here, Lucky. I'm sick today."
I guess that's one way to look at it, turning a negative into a positive. Can I get open? Okay, so then I'll get started on maybe a few of the basics first. All right, so I'm pretty sure all of you are aware of what the eye is and where it's located, but I think a good thing to really think about is that it's spherical. Your eye is encased in the head, and actually I'm going to do a front, side, and three-quarter view, I think, of what I'm about to do here. Let me move some of this other stuff out of the way. There we go. And I'll even address, some of you have asked me how to draw something in three-quarter view. So I'm going to try to do a front, a side, and a three-quarter view of an eyeball. Give my best explanation of it during this live stream.
Oh my goodness. More
What?
hellos. Hello from Brazil.
Hello. Actually, if you let me explain this, then we can do the many more hellos we got.
All right.
All right, so then from the front view, the iris and the pupil will encompass about a third of the actual eyeball itself. So you can just kind of think of it in thirds. But since you don't really see the other sections of the eyeball, unless your eyes are like really open and you're trying to be expressive as possible, then you can pay attention to that. But for the most part, just know it's about a third of the size. Now, when you're laying in the lids of the skin, I want you to think of these lids going around a sphere. So when I'm laying this line right here, I can do it flat because there are some eyes that go up, but you have to imagine that it's still skin that's being folded around a spherical object. Now on the front view, it might not be quite as easy to see, but when you do the side view in three-quarter, it'll become a little easier to explain. So you know what, maybe I'll do the iris and pupil on each of them first. So then on the side view, this is where it gets a little interesting. The eye itself has a little, it bumps out a bit. And it's almost like a contact or something where you can imagine that there's a clear little bump where the iris and the pupil are. Because the iris, I'm trying to think of the best way to illustrate this. If I did like a close-up view on this, the iris is actually right here. It's not on a clear part of the bump because the bump is, I forget what the scientific name for it is, but that's why when you see an eyeball in front view, the highlight will be on the top because the highlight is sitting on the clear part here. And then that's why the bottom part of the iris is usually lit because it's convex, I believe is the right one. And then, actually, you know what? I'm going to double check that so I don't say the wrong thing here.
Yeah, the little bumpy thingy that you're talking about is the aqueous. I think it's the
Aqueous, thank you.
aqueous or something like that.
And this is, you think it'd be a really easy Google search. I might be doing the wrong thing. Actually, you know what? Maybe I'll grab the eye thing that I did for concept cookie. Because I think there's a lot of things that people tend to miss about drawing the eyes, and it's one of those really easy fixes, just as long as you understand what's going on underneath. There we go. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to bring it up, make it bigger. Okay, so this was the thing I did a few years ago, and it was not so much how to draw the eye, but understanding the eye. So the bubble part is the convex part of the eye. So if we look down here into this little corner section here, and actually maybe I'll zoom in. So this gives a better explanation without me having to draw it out really quick on having the iris be more concave and the bubble part be more convex. Highlight sits on the top because of the bubble would catch the light at that angle, and then the inside of the iris would catch the light down there. That's why it kind of looks like it pools on the bottom of the iris, which it gives that really cool effect. And that's why when you lay the iris or the highlight on the eye itself, it's usually on the darker part of the iris, which gives it that nice contrast. Okay, so now I'm going to go erase this. So then in our side view, I'm going to like barely hint at the pupil and the iris itself. And then at a 3/4 view, I'll have it looking slightly down. It'll be like there. And then just know if it's not supposed to be a perfect circle. The more that the eyeball is turning, so let's say pupil or the iris and the pupil were like right here, it'd be more oval shape. It wouldn't be a sphere at that point because you're seeing it at an angle where then the circle appears to like flatten out, which would give it more oval shape. Oops.
I thought I lost you for a second. You went quiet. It's like,
Oh, nope, still here. All right, so now I'm going to do the outlining. Oops. This is one of those times where I really should name my layers. Okay, so I'm going to do the skin outline on each of these as well. So now from the side view of this eye, I'm not going to have it be directly on the eyeball because it's skin that juts out just a little bit. So it would be something more like this. And same on the bottom. I think, I forgot which teacher told me, but it looks like a Pac-Man mouth that's like around the head itself, at least in side view. And that's what I always think of when I draw my side view eyes. And without going into too much detail there, I'll go on the 3/4 view. So the way that I'm drawing these lines, or the way that I'm placing them, I'm imagining them on a sphere. I think that's something very important that you guys should always keep in the back of your mind or be consciously aware of. And after we do some more of like the analyzing and studying, then I'll just go have fun and then draw a bunch of different eyes as quick as I can to give you a look at like the different eye shapes, which are, I guess, down here in the example too. My favorite eyes to draw are called hooded eyes, and I'll get into more of that as we do those. Okay. So then I guess from here, what I want to talk about next would be the area around the eye. So you not only have to think about the eyeball itself, the skin around it, but then the other facial features that definitely make an impression on the shaping of the eye and the skin around it. So I'm talking about, if I draw a quick head here, okay, so your nose is the closest facial feature and definitely has pretty big influence on the eye itself. Smaller here. And if my eye placement was like, let's say here, then one thing I always think about is having a little pocket right in the corner of the eye, because then this will start the bridge of the nose here. And there's usually a form of like a slight gradient that like bridges off of the bridge of the nose. And it forms like this really nice crease right there. That area right there tends to be like a highlight right there. And then the other important thing is the eyebrow and the top of the skull itself. So now I usually draw just gesture lines around the eye to give myself some kind of an idea of like the cheekbone and the area above the eye, so that when it's almost like you're placing, not, you're like implying the underlying form, but you just keep in your back of your mind that these can be erased later or just drawn over. Because I think sometimes if you go at it at like it's just a blank white slate, it can be a little more intimidating. And to help you out and maybe see lines that build a better form, I would just do more gestural drawing to really create the eye that you want. So I'm going to zoom in even more here. Then with my gesture lines kind of placed out, I'm going to get more in detail here. So this upper lid definitely tends to be darker, and it usually is more of like a solid line. There might be like a few breaks in the line, but then as we get to the end, it usually separates a little bit, and then especially on the inside of the eye, usually sometimes it even forms like a little like a teardrop shape here. So I try to just apply a hint to that, like that. So it gives more of an impression that these eyes are a little more pushed back than the top part of the eyebrow itself. The eyebrow would sit right here and goes down into this slope here. And then something that I think I learned in high school that my teacher really tried to nail into me is that there's a ridge here where it's not like the skin completely is flat against up the eye. There's a what is called, I guess, in a makeup application, the waterline, where it's like the inside, the skin in between your eyelashes and the eyeball itself. So don't forget about that area. Now, usually it's not as prominent where you don't have to put super emphasis on it, but just know the eyelashes don't start at the eyeball, they start at the very edge of that water line. That's where you can think of it. Oh, iris in and pupil. And I usually try to make my pupil about half the size of the iris, but you got to remember the pupil size will differ depending on the light source. So if you have a really intense front light, then you should make pupil size definitely smaller, more intense. But now when you do that, you'll definitely get a more like very, very intense looking pupil, and it gives the impression, sometimes it just looks evil or gives a very intense, bold look to it, which maybe you're not going for that. But sometimes if you go too diluted, that can also look strange as well. So you almost have to find like your happy medium. Just around there. So now I'll talk a little bit more about the difference between masculine and feminine eyes in a second, but just know usually there are at least a subtle hint of a bag underneath of the eye, because when you think about it, when the eye closes, that's why this one's definitely more prominent, because the skin that's here has to pretty much fold all the way down to blink. And that's why when it pushes back up, it creates this really deep recessed pocket. That's why it looks so dark. Now on the bottom, the skin isn't as there isn't as much skin as the top fold, but there's enough where you might get is underneath here. And this is where you get some people that have really hooded or baggaged eyes, or sometimes they're really prominent. And usually as you age, these become thicker and definitely more prominent. But when they're younger looking eyes, I like to hint at it because sometimes younger people do have deeper pockets, especially in the top one, but sometimes even in the bottom one. So I like to hint at that as well. And then that's the area down here. And now in the area above, there's usually, if you can think from like a side view, the eyebrow is sticking out, or the part here is jutting out more than the eyeball itself. So I try to give some kind of an impression that it's recessed right here. Then it goes back up into the forehead. Like that. Sometimes I tend to make this a little too long. And you'll notice things about yourself like how you draw the eyes in the pattern that you do. And I think I'm going to give a quick expression on how I do mine quickly. So when I do my eyes, I almost always start from the edge, go like this. So that's kind of like the gestural markings that I usually draw on my eye every single time. So I have kind of found like a pattern where I usually find these very implemented gesture lines where then I can go in and refine after. So sometimes it's about working fast and kind of figuring out which lines you do first and what you find prominent about your eyes and what makes your eyes, uniquely you and how you capture them. Like that. I'm going to zoom back out and see what they look like. Because sometimes when you stay zoomed in for so long, when you zoom back out, you're like, oh, wow, that's what I drew when I was that close up. So I can already tell I already like my gestural one better than the example one, because the example one does feel a little stiff, where I like being a little more loose so that I can play with the softness in some areas where when it's too rigid, it almost looks like clay or like marble or something that is just way too tough. And I want it to give the impression of skin and softer. But then the eye itself, I definitely want to give more of a tightness to it. So and I guess this is something that I try to avoid is doing a perfect circle for the iris with like a perfect edge. That is not a perfect circle. Hold on. Let me just grab my circle tool. Like this. This is something I try to avoid. And if you look at your own eye, and this is probably the best advice I have for drawing eyes, is look at your own eye. Like really look at it. Go as close as you can. Look at the way there's some like highlighted areas and how the skin is thinner, like right here, and where your eyelash and your water line is. How there's like usually a breakup in the center of the iris where it gives that look of the pattern of the eye. Some people call it the flower pattern or the petal pattern, and how the pupil itself isn't like this perfect black dot with a hard edge. It actually is a little softer, and the edge melts into the pupil. It's not like this really sharp, definite edge. Okay, I know I've been talking pretty long straight, so I'm sure there's a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hit me up.
All right. Casey Mayer asks, what would you say is a good method to creating a realistic iris?
Realistic iris? Okay, let me zoom back in here. Okay, I think I want to work on that eye that I just did. Okay. All right, so let's say we want to take this to the next level. And you know what, maybe I'll enlarge it so I'm not working on such a small scale here. Okay, so to do this iris right, I want to first make sure I have a pretty solid foundation that I'm working from. I'm going to do some coloring here and some shading for you guys. First, I'm going to grab a neutral color. Actually, since I know it's going to be skin, I'll grab maybe more neutral skin color here. Yeah, I don't like that color as much. There we go. All right. So on the eye itself, I try to work with a neutral gray. I'm going to grab a slightly lighter neutral gray. And I'll go more in the mid section here. I'm going to first lay out the cornea, which is considered the white part of the eye. But I think it's very important for you guys to practice not working with a pure white to create this part. Grab a slightly lighter value. Because when I shade the eyeball, I'm still working with a round object. So I want to give the impression of roundness, and usually that's done with like a gradient, depending on where the light source is coming from, and then you pillow shade it out to the edge. I want to work with, let's do a green eye. I'm going to once again grab a darker green color. I try to work with very desaturated colors in the shadows and for my foundations, and then build up more of those interesting value and saturations and hues as we build up the light source. And actually, maybe I'll lay out the colors that I'm using on the side here too. Okay, so now I'm going to color pick that green. I'm going to go lighter in value, slightly closer to yellow and a bit more saturated, so we get that color. Do this on a new layer as well. And I work it near the bottom of the iris, let it pool up down there. And I'm going to grab a layer close to black. And you can see how I'm not creating a perfect edge on this iris. It'll be definitely sharper, but not nearly as sharp as I see a lot of beginner artists making their pupils. Okay, now I'm going to work above the line art layer. Actually, erase the line art layer that's inside of the eye so I can better illustrate the iris here. Some irises do have a darker ring around them. Some of them are more neutral and they kind of fade into the cornea. But for this one, I'll do a slightly darker ring. I try to keep my iris looking more circular than non-circular. Sometimes if it's too off, it may look kind of strange. I definitely want it to read as an eyeball, or as an iris, I mean. All right, so then now I'm looking at the shadow of the iris here. I want that to match on the cornea itself. I'm gonna grab that gray, go slightly darker. I'm gonna kind of follow that shadow line that we have going. Because you got to remember the skin would be casting a shadow on the eye itself. Like that. Okay, so now I'm going to do that flower, the petal pattern on the iris here. For this, I try to keep it more irregular, so I don't try to make it look perfect. Because sometimes when you try to make it look perfect, that's when it actually looks more inorganic and less natural. So sometimes I just like to have my hand be more fluid and free with the brush strokes. Now we're going to get into some of the highlights. So the first thing is I want to highlight some of the areas in the iris itself. And I won't do too much that's in the shadow here, because I really want it to read as in the shadow, where the area that's catching the light would definitely have more of a vibrancy to it. And from here, this is where it really makes it start to look 3D, because right now it's still looking kind of flat, but now when we add in our highlight, you can see how it definitely gives it more of a sense of realism.
The magical highlight.
Right? It really does add an effect to it. I'll usually add some bounce lighting on the cornea from the ground. There we go. So then the next thing you would want to focus on is the skin that's around the eye, and try not to stick with just like these two colors. I'm going to pull in some red, because usually there's some pinkness or some red hues that are associated with the eye itself, and it usually brings more interest to your palette in general. So I would definitely recommend pulling some of those different colors in there. I guess while I'm shading this, maybe I'll answer a few questions.
All right, yeah, we've
I'm sure we have a lot. I'm sorry, guys.
um, this one you're gonna probably end up doing anyway in the next couple minutes. It's any tips on how to draw the eyelashes?
Oh yeah, I can do that on this one too.
Uh, I'm gonna try to find eyeball ones first while you're working on it.
Smart.
Aaron Huggins asks, "Hey from the UK, I was wondering if you could talk through how to draw all the bones around the eyes from different angles, especially the one above the eye, and how to give it shape and form."
Yeah, definitely one of those. I'll definitely open a Google reference on the side so that I know for sure I'm giving you guys the right information.
Sydney Kruger asks, "Can you share any tips on animal eyes as well?"
I could do that.
Dylan Ever asks, "How would you create a more cartoony but still detailed eye?"
Okay, well, maybe I should write these down.
uh,
Okay, so animal, cartoon, yet realistic, and then eyelashes I'll get to in a second.
yeah. Omar asks, "Greetings from Mexico. My question is about the lower lip of the eye and how I can make it look natural but not too ugly and age my characters, especially women."
Definitely make it more subtle. Let me see if I have any examples off the top of my head. Let me go look for one really quick. I definitely understand what you're saying, and you gotta be careful with that lower lid, but usually you can do it with makeup. Let me pull in a reference. Of course, it's gonna be, we'll get Natalie Dormer back in the stream. Because she has really heavy bottom lids. And you can see here, if you really look at the line, like they're definitely lower and they're big. But if you want to give them more of a sensual prettiness to them, you can highlight it with that black mascara and eyeliner and the eyeshadow, I think it's called. Um, and then kind of work this olive shape or the almond shape to really accentuate her eyes. And that's how you can make them prettier, essentially. And if you just want to, you're specifically looking for feminine eyes, that's one way to do it. And I usually stick to that when I do eyes. Actually, I might leave this open. What I pick from. My eye is definitely looking very dark in values. I'll pump these up a tad. So the corner of the eye right here was what I was talking about with the slope. So in the image, you can definitely see it better here, where you get that nice highlight right on that edge. And I really like emphasizing that when I do my own characters.
Dylan ever asks about the master studies. Can you give us some good artists to do for the studies? Also, hello from California.
Yes. If you actually go to the Concept Cookie exercise page on the site, we give a Pinterest board of all the artists. You know what? Maybe I'll share my, rather than just sharing my screen, I'll share my desktop. Let me go ahead and switch over. So let me see if I can find it. Okay, so if you go to Concept Cookie or cgcookie.com/concept and then find our exercise 37 master studies, it is right here, right under the image itself. There's a Pinterest board of master studies. And here we have many, many, many pictures from Rembrandt and Sargent and Rapin. And there's a few new ones that I threw in there too, because I think even though it's a modern artist, I still think they can be considered a master because of their understanding and their level of detail and just understanding of light and color and how to work it in a painting is so great that I included some of those as well. So if you're looking for some master studies and you can't really seem to find any good ones on Google search, check out our Pinterest board.
This is a good question from D. Brown. When dealing with the size of the eye socket, eyelids, and eyeball, how much influence do other facial features have on the scale of these? For instance, brow size, bridge size, cheekbone size, etc.
A good influence. I would think, though, it depends on the type of character you're trying to create. Like if you're trying to create a very petite, smaller character, then I would go with just overall smaller facial features in general. Where if you have a character with a very small face, eyes, and mouth, and then it has a really long nose, it might throw off the entire character and it gives a different impression. So my first impression of that character would be different. And it wouldn't read so much as like a pixie, spunky character. It might read as more serious, thought out character. And you want to be thinking about how even subtle changes to size variations on your facial features can affect the overall look and impression that your character is giving off. Uh, but in terms of like real life and looking at a facial structure, usually if you have like, it's kind of depending on your underlying anatomy too. Like some people have slightly larger bone structures where I guess the most obvious example are people that have very prominent cheekbones. And you can definitely see those. Actually, Natalie has pretty strong cheekbones. And it definitely is read on the outside of the skin. And you can have fun shading it and really emphasizing the bones there. Same thing with some people have larger foreheads and usually it juts out more, so there might be more of a shadow underneath here. Or the eye sockets might be closer together or farther apart, and it definitely leaves an impression on the character. So it's definitely good to be thinking about that kind of stuff when you're working on your own character.
Yari says, "Hi, when are you going to do the portfolio critique stream, if you're going to do it?"
If we did it, it would be probably in a month or two, just because I think we are going to do because I did a portfolio critique if you watched that live stream where I talked about this, and I think I'm going to have a whole portfolio post that I want to do. So it would probably be after that. So I'd probably create the post and then talk about wanting to do viewer submissions on the post and then take a few after that. So it all kind of depends on when we do that post. But like right now, my schedule is pretty much working on, and if you can actually see it in the background, my getting started series. I just have one video left to do, and that should be out probably Friday, hopefully. And after that, then I have to do the next fundamental tutorial series, along with doing or starting the book reviews. So there's a, a bunch of stuff going on right now, but once that kind of lightens up, and I would say maybe in like a month, that's when I'll be able to focus on other stuff too. Although now that Joe's here, I think we can move a little faster.
Mike asks, "How do you create creepy eyes?"
Creepy eyes?
Yeah.
I don't define eyes as creepy. I think generally associated creepy eyes are angular eyes, but I actually really like angular eyes. The more round the eye, usually it reads as softer and cuter and not as threatening. So I guess creepy eyes would be considered like any Disney villain ever has creepy eyes, where they're very angular, they're like slit, and they're very sharp. It's intense, and it goes back to the whole shape association with characters and what is considered heroic looking and villainous. I'm like thinking of Scar, Ursula, like all of them all at once right now. Jafar, big time for me. Has those very angular, sharp, pointed eyes. But if you're going for more creepy, I just did one the other day. You can either so like even on this eye, anything that's sclera is considered creepy, and sclera contacts are the black ones. So like if I just made this eyeball solid black, it adds a certain level of uncomfortableness to it. But then you can take it up a notch where if you add another color then to it, it will get more subtle. And this definitely adds in more of the creepiness factor, and maybe give more emphasis down there. Where with just two color additions, you can see how that definitely changes the overall mood and look of the character, even though we're still working with like a standard almond eye. I'm not working with a slanted eye. I'm just working with that. Or even like, uh, this might look kind of cool if I do it right. Like any kind of color isolation where you're really focusing on like contrast, that is definitely also creepy. I don't like that one as much. But that was just a quick look at like what creepy eye and how to do it. So now the area under the hood, I try to give a slight highlight to as well. Right here, make it a little lighter. And I might give it one highlight or two highlight right under. So then the highlight would go right there. That. All right, sorry, next question.
Next question is from Walter Jones. It says, "Any tips on boxing in the eyebrows and maybe dome feathering or shaping techniques? My eyebrows tend to come out looking like Rock Lee's."
um, yeah, hold on. I want to make sure I know the reference you're talking about. I'm assuming Naruto.
Yeah, like, uh,
Because to be complete, oh yeah, okay. If I remember, they're like the really blocky ones. Yes. No. They look like. Hold on, let me see if I can draw them. It's like this.
yeah.
I actually really like boxy eyebrows. Not that big, but like, I do tend to make my eyebrows too high. Like even on this eye, it could be a little lower. So when blocking your eyebrows, I always think of this first shape. So this box right here. and then your secondary, which is more of like a triangular, depending on the character. So I just block it in and like try not to overemphasize the sharpness of it either, because since it's just a bunch of like micro hairs pretty much that make up the eyebrow, it's not a solid form or shape. It's more loose. It just gives the impression of being more solid because of the look of it. So then as we get near the end here, sometimes you can even break it up with throwing a few of those skin colors sporadically in there. Make this a tad smoother. And then just think about the area that it's sitting on. So on the skull, there's like an eye socket right here, and then the skin like wraps around it to get into the socket itself. So the eyebrow kind of sits right on that edge. That's what I always think of when I do my eyebrows. And I usually add a few little stray hairs on the end and then over here. Especially for a male character, I definitely add those. And sometimes for female, if you want to keep it cleaner, you can do it. And you definitely see with female eyebrows where they're sharper and they're thinner. They're like this. But even if you want to make it thinner, I would still have more of a not perfect cut to it. I would keep it more organic looking because sometimes when it's too sharp, unless the character you can tell applies a lot of makeup, because there are girls that apply eyeliner to their eyebrows. Like that's what gives the really sharp eyebrow look. So it is actually normal, and that's why for females it can actually look normal to do very sharp eyebrows. But for guys, I would definitely stay more away from it. And really, if you feel like your eyebrows are like Rock Lee's, want that because sometimes really thick eyebrows give a really cool impression to the character. And for males especially, you can definitely go with a larger eyebrow and not worry about if it's looking soft or I don't want to say effeminate, but thin, where guys tend to have thicker eyebrows, and you can definitely play with that. But if they're too big, then definitely just tone it down. Like if it's coming out way up here, that might be a problem. You could do it where it would be like this big, but you definitely want to tailor it to the character and make sure you're not going overboard with it. Next question.
Andrew says, "Hey guys, I have a bit of a question on time management. I'm wondering what
Absolutely.
your daily schedules look like in relation to your art when you're making. Uh, what 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 proportions would you say you spend on your work art, practice training art, and fun art?"
This is a great question. I think it varies. I don't want to say I have like a set standard that I try to hit, even though I pretend like I do. I really don't. Like, let's see. Last week in general, I was working very heavily on making new prints for convention, and those would be considered my con art because it's not like for personal, uh, I guess, personal work, or it's not for work, and it's not a study. That's for convention. So that's a whole separate thing. And then I have the work like my sketchbook, which actually is right in front of me. Uh, and I finished, or you know what? Hold on. Joe, talk to them about yours for a second. I'm going to go grab my sketch.
Okay. What I was gonna say is when thinking about art and doing art, those are two different things, obviously. Uh, when I can't be drawing at a specific time, or if I need to take a break from drawing, like say my hands or my wrists getting tired or my fingers are getting tired, then that's when I break down a lot of the things that I'm looking at. So I'll examine reflections, I'll examine highlights and how to capture 3D form, and I'll examine it, and I'll usually go write it down. Um, but that's still studying art, and I do that all the time. Um, Whereas that's kind of like what you said, like practice and training would go. That's what I would consider that to be. And then I also work on art, probably uh, 3 to 5 hours a day. That's like work art. Um, and then fun art is kind of like when I do my gestures and when I do anatomy. And that's usually towards the end of the night when I wind down, and that's maybe for like an hour, hour and a half. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I've got my sketchbook. So I always keep my sketchbook around and handy. This is what I finished last night. I don't know how well this might even show on the camera. Might be really blurry, but I always try to sketch at least something every day. And then I guess without letting you guys know too much about my life, I usually end work around 6. And then from like 6 to, let me share my screen again. From like 6 to 9 or 6 to 10, I usually like to do my own thing. I like take a break from art or just in front of my computer. I need to get out of the house. Sometimes I feel too homestuck. And then from like 10 p.m. till about 2 or 3 a.m., like that's my prime time where I feel like I can work a mile a minute, and I love that. And I think that's why for you, it really comes down to the person. Would I ever recommend my schedule to someone? No, it's very strange. And most people have a job where they have to wake up earlier, so they can't be staying up super late. I just consider myself a night owl, and it's a bad habit that I formed when I was in college. And I think now when I get around that 9 to 10 p.m. Area every night, I feel like invigorated. I feel like that's when I am good to go. And I try to pump out as much as I can. And I think it comes down to what am I working on right now? Do I want to finish the pencil sketch that I've been working on the past few days? Do I want to work on my swordplay work? Do I want to do a new study? Do I do a conference? And I try to bounce between them. I try not to put too much emphasis on one over the other because then I think it would be like favoring. I feel like drawing, in a weird way, they're each like my children, and I can't just favor one over the other. I got to try to balance my time with all of them. So the best thing for you to do is balance your time, but draw every day, no matter what it is, whatever, regardless of what it is you're drawing. Draw every day.
Sin Watson asks, "Are you going to be painting tonight on Twitch again?"
My red picture. Let me see. I actually have had it open since last Wednesday. Uh, yeah, actually, I probably could. You know what? I think I will because I really want to experiment with the environment pieces down here. If you guys don't know, or it's probably blatantly obvious, I'm not an environment artist and I struggle with it a bit. So if you want to see me try to do some environment stuff tonight, I think I'll start my stream at 9 p.m. Central again and go for like an hour or two and just yeah, just work on my personal print again.
Alan Brosia asks, "Hey, if it's not too much work, I would be glad to see some examples of lighting atmosphere in the eye. Greetings from Germany."
Okay, let me. I know what you want, and I want to make sure I do it right. I'm gonna Google search this really quick.
Is it like the buttercup?
Yep.
Yeah.
But when it's like a very close-up look at an eyeball, sometimes you'll be able to see the environment in the eye. Let me see if I can find, because it's being reflected. And I don't know if I'll be able to find a good picture really quick. Oh, wait, there we go. So like this is an example of hyperrealism where you're drawing literally the reflection of the environment around it on the eyeball surface itself. And that's because of how intense this reflective surface is because of the light that's being casted. So like here you can tell someone's holding out their phone and you can see the building that they're in front of and they're taking a picture of that, or the building that's across the street, I should say, because it's being reflected on the eye. I don't want to go and draw this because it might take too long, but if you can see in my eye that I did a few years ago over here, the eye that I drew was my own, and I took it in a hallway in a studio. So the light is the sunlight coming through the window, and then this blue-gray area is the sky, and then this edge right here were the buildings that were a shadow where the light wouldn't be, or that you couldn't see the sky in. So it's one of those where you can add it. It's definitely like hyperrealism where I don't think it's necessary or appropriate in a lot of situations, unless if you're doing like a very, very close up look at the eye or it's intentional, where I don't think you should force environment surroundings on the eye. I do say though, you could add like some bounce lighting on the bottom part of the eye here, like this. just to give a more impression of the glossiness of the eye and how it reflects light. But I wouldn't kill yourself over that. Okay, I think I'll go into the animal eye next because I want to hit the other two things that we wanted to cover. I want to do a really cool one. I know goats have really cool eyes. There's some frogs that have really crazy eyes.
Micah asks, how do you pick eye colors to match your character's personality?
Great question. So when I think of, I guess when I think of when I add my eye colors to my characters, even in front of me I have all my 10 characters, and 7 of them have a color that's more blue, green, or gray, and then 3 of them have a version, or 2 of them have version of brown. Now I think it's just because I like the look of blue and green eyes, and I probably favor that more. And I think that definitely reflects in the character. And I remember getting into a discussion with someone that had these really soft, light green eyes. Actually, I might give an impression on this eye right here. So their eye color was like even lighter than that. Let me pick a. It was like this color, and they had small pupils, and it was definitely intense, and it was soft, and they hated it because they were a guy, and they thought their eyes made them look effeminate. Now, the reason blue and green eyes are considered more feminine is because usually they show, or what is tended to believe is that they express emotion easier, and that's why they come across as sensitive. And I think I'm more attracted to that aspect of it, where even if someone has a really tough, rough exterior, if they have like these really light, or even like I think of people with really light blue, crystal blue eyes, and how that rough exterior is more of just like a shell that they're really actually maybe even sad, and it comes across in the eyes, especially if you add more of a glossiness to it. So the impression of the eye, definitely think about how you see eyes and let that influence your own way of drawing eyes. I think that's why I tend to stick with, like I think one of my characters, Miko, he has this really rough exterior and definitely like over masculine features where like thick eyebrows, heavy baggage, and scars and whatever. But then his eyes are like ice blue, and they have a narrow slant where they're hooded. This and that upper eyelid is lower. And then he has lower eyebrows. So it gives the impression of being more worn down or like just tired. And I think that can have a huge impression on the character without even telling you anything about the character themselves or their backstory. So yeah, I think having a look at how your eye colors match the personality plays a big role, especially when you're doing your own characters. Okay, so I'm gonna find an animal eye really quick. I want to
The
find a really.
Solid Moose asks, Tim, do you have a crush on Natalie?
uh, that's not apparent. I think Natalie's very gorgeous. Yes. There's an eye,
Ooh.
right? Owls have some of the coolest eyes. You actually might be surprised where sometimes I'm surprised at the look of eyes. Where like, okay, wait, here's a jaguar. Like I really thought about this one day. Like, how does that pupil even work? Like, why would it be a slit? Like that doesn't even make sense to me. And then you get find like really weird eyes, like this one. And you're like, what? Like, how did your genetics make that?
Well, have you seen the eyeball of a what? It's like a lobster or a sea shrimp.
No.
Hold on, let me find it for you.
There's some like crazy ones. Oh, this one I really love too.
The mantis shrimp.
Mantis shrimp. Oh, weird.
Yeah, right?
So like if you look for crazy animal, like if you want to do a study on animal eyes, just type in like unusual or obscure or weird animal eyes, and you can definitely do some fun studies off of that. But I think for this one, I want to do that reptile. Or actually, I kind of want to do this jaguar or bobcat. I'm not sure what animal this is, but I want to do it. Okay, so I'm gonna try to gesture out the shape of the eye here. Okay, maybe some of the surrounding colors. And then while I'm kind of color picking, I'll do another question.
I'm trying to find questions that aren't really pertaining to you drawing a different variation of an eyeball.
Ah, gotcha.
People are asking about showing expressions in eyes. So,
Oh yeah, I can definitely touch on that.
oh, here's a good question. It's from Andrea. It says, I have been wondering if there is a point where you are too young to teach others about art. I'm just 16 and I would love to do tutorials, but I'm afraid that I don't have enough knowledge, and I'm also afraid of not being taken seriously because of my age.
I think that's a serious concern, and I think it's one of those where I think you know deep down too, as you do more work, you'll definitely get better. And I think though at the same time, I think people need to understand the new generation, and I talk about this a lot, how they're introduced to digital art a lot sooner than we were. So they might I'm actually really excited to see what they come up with because I think they'll be better than the modern masters today because of the resources that were out there and the way that they were able to learn was probably a lot faster. So I don't ever want you to think that your age discredits you. If your work is good, your work is good. It doesn't matter what your age is. You might not know some of the technical terms or some of that stuff that like people kind of harp on sometimes. I know when I first started at Concept Cookie, I got really nervous because I was only 21 and I was like, I I don't know if people are going to even listen to me. And sometimes you have to find your confidence just through repetition and really understanding the material itself. So I spent a lot of hours like looking into research on, especially with color. But when I would like do my eye research, I taught myself, okay, that's called the cornea, and like things that are more technical because that gives you more. I don't want to say, hmm, like you are seen as more legit when someone's watching you if you are able to name drop some things. But honestly, if your work is good, that will trump any age preset like look at you and be like, no, she can't teach. Like I definitely think your work will speak for itself.
Okra says, you're doing master study exercise? Excited to see that one.
Yes, it is these two. Actually, I don't know the artist offhand. I'll have to look at it, but I'm really excited. Here's the originals. And I really like it because the use of their cool colors are so isolated. Like on her eyes, they're actually like a light blue on the white part of the eye, and then on him, it's the glasses reflection, how it's like a slight purple variant. And I love that. So I'm gonna see if I can capture that to the best of my ability.
Beatrice asks, is that a skull of some sort on the piano behind you?
Oh, what? Wait, hold on. This? I actually found this at a thrift store, and if you guys don't follow me on my drawings, I love drawing horned creatures and implementing them in my work, or even on like helmets and stuff, where I find texture like really interesting. I love to draw it. So sometimes I like having my examples and what I'm drawing right in front of me, so that I can have that reference right there. And yeah, I actually am not sure what animal this is. So what you said might be, it might be a deer, I think. Animal? I don't know. I don't want to pretend like I know when I really don't. Let me switch back over. Okay, so now for this eye, I really want to be focused on the sharpness of this curve here, because it really is a curve, and that's what gives it a look where it has a very fierce intensity to it. I'm trying to capture that here. And actually, we can double learn here because this actually has the environment reflection in the eye itself, or on the eye, I should say.
Just in case asks, what exactly is a double eyelid?
Double eyelid?
Yeah, do you know what double eyelid is?
I'm assuming that's where, like, on the eye itself, where it'd be like it folds here, or it's like looks like that.
No, it's like seen in many Asian cultures where the eye kind of like just goes straight to, like it just covers the eye. Like there's no eyelid.
Oh, I call that hooded.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, I definitely think with the Asian culture. Hold on, let me find my reference here. I would say that's what it's associated most with,
Or not.
like this
Is it
here.
culture or race? Are we politically correct? I don't know.
Probably not. I'm sorry. Um, I remember I just watched. This is so funny that we're talking about this. I just watched a movie where the mom was very proud of her Chinese heritage because the difference between a Chinese and a Japanese person for her was that Chinese people have a stronger upper lip, is what she called it, where she said Japanese people do not. They have the hooded eye. So it's definitely associated with Asian. I don't want to say culture or race because you're right. I don't know if we're correct, but it's definitely one of those cool things where it looks like a sharp stop from where the skin stops and where the eye begins. And then also, what is important, you can see how the skin pushes the eyelids down slightly. Where this is a little misleading because there's makeup on it, but the eyelashes themselves usually have a slight upward curve to them. It's not too strong, but in this scenario, the skin is pushing them slightly downward, so you can't even see the effect much at all.
Erica Hoffman says crocodile, but spells it with an I. That's a good one.
I see what you did there. Oh no, I'm recycling my own puns. This isn't good.
D Brown says goat eyes freak me out with their weird coin slots for pupils. Okra wants to know what brush you're using.
Oh, this is my chalk brush. Or it's really like a standard chalk brush where you can download it on Content Cookie for free. It's in the basic brushes, and this brush is kind of the one I've been using for everything recently.
Oh, this is a great question. Uh, yeah, Yelenia? Yelenia? Did you ever meet someone with an interesting face and you want to ask them to take a picture because you want to draw them so badly?
uh, yes, actually, I take pictures of people with my phone, and I told this story I think on a live stream before too. There was one instance where I actually got caught taking a picture of someone, where I was stuck at an airport, and it was this kid, and he had like glasses and this really interesting facial structure. It was also I took a picture of a woman that same day where I got away with that one, but the boy totally caught me because when I was taking the picture, and this is gonna sound so creepy, and I'm sorry, but when I was taking the picture, I left my flash on. So when I took the picture of him, I was trying to be like all covert and like I thought I was so secretive. And then all of a sudden the flash went off, and I totally had to play it off like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. Like he totally knew I was taking a picture of him. Like why else would I have my phone towards him? But yeah, I find that all the time, and especially at me and Joe joke about when we go to George Webb's. I always feel like there's really interesting people just there, and I want to draw them. And I do want to say there's a folder on my phone where I just take pictures of people that have interesting faces.
Yeah, my favorite is when you're sitting down and someone's sitting perfectly like pro or side view or profile view to you, and you can just like see the outline of their head, and they've
Oh
got like a
yeah.
big nose, and they've got like a really big chin, and it's like the interesting shape that forms of their head that always is
Mhm.
just like I want to take a picture of you.
So yes, don't feel afraid or weird about doing it because it is weird. Just don't get caught. Because then you'll
What?
have to try to explain it, and that's probably the most awkward thing you'll ever have to do.
Or you could just ask them.
Ooh, yeah. I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that.
I know, right?
Actually, now that I think about it, we should just ask people. I kind of want to ask the George Webb people.
What if they're just like, no, leave me alone.
Like, all right. What if they
Uh,
were totally into it?
some people I imagine would be, and they'd be like, "Oh, can I see when you're done?" Um,
No.
Salad Snake asks, "Do you know how to get a chalk line brush in Paint Tool Sai?"
Joe, you might know this.
Um, you got to play with the settings a lot, and I would definitely search Google for Paint Tool Sai brushes because some people out there have made crazy awesome brushes. I know Tumblr has just like its own hashtag or it has, and I know there's someone who made their own Tumblr blog that is just all Paint Tool Sai brushes from a bunch of artists that use Paint Tool Sai. So go check that out, and then alter your own because it's a bit more personal that way. You know,
Hmm.
it takes a bit to play with though because Paint Tool Sai is kind of more fidgety than Photoshop.
It's like the younger brother that can't stop moving.
Yeah.
Okay, what I'm trying to do is I'm gonna try to draw this reflection, but I got to keep in mind there's a distortion to the perspective too. So I'm trying to capture that, but also make it look like it's on the surface of the eye. So that's why doing environmental reflections is so tough, and it's something I don't recommend unless if you're purposely doing a extreme close-up like this.
Tomas says, "Is it hard to get a job as a concept artist slash matte painter? Uh, I mean, if there is enough space for new people."
Yeah, I don't even want to sugarcoat it. It's really hard. I think though, just like I think it was Ty Carter, his quote was, "Good work will always be," or what was it? Shoot. It was something talking about how if your work is good enough, you will definitely be hired because that's something people always want is good quality work. If you can produce that, then you're set. But especially starting off, it's hard to compete with artists that have been in the field for like 10 plus years. And that's why I don't even want to try to pretend like it's easy where it is. It's really tough. But if you push yourself, you can do it. And try to look more for like an entry level position first, like a QA or something, and then work your way up. Because sometimes just being around those people, it'll influence you and you'll be able to pick up tips over the months that you work there and then be able to apply it to your own. And then eventually they'll give you a shot to prove yourself and be like, all right, well, we need another map painter for this job, and they're going to look eternal first. So they're going to look at the people that they have working for them already before they try to outsource or hire someone new. So I would definitely say shoot lower first and then try to work up the ranks.
Rachel T asks, "What made you go into 2D concept art if you said you went to school for 3D? And do you ever still work on 3D projects?"
I went to school wanting to make my own games. I had it in my head since I was very little that I was going to run my own video game company. And I had like 7 video games in my head, and I even recruited people from my grade school to work for me, and they would give me weekly assignments. I was very, I don't want to say a demanding little child, but I was very focused. I feel like I knew what I wanted at a very young age. And when I went to college, I still had that intention of video games, but I thought I would be more of like the concept artist slash the person that ran the company. And when I was taught 3D, it was one of those things where, yeah, it was really cool, and I'm glad I did it. It was one of those that I actually never saw myself doing in the long run. I never, even while I was doing it, I was never like, yeah, this is what I want to get my job for. It was always drawing because I felt like that's where my strength lied or laid, lied, whatever. And then when I graduated from my school, I'm sure you guys have heard this many times, but I always talk about how I almost failed. They almost failed me because my portfolio was all 2D and I went to a 3D school, and for the requirements, you had to have at least whatever amount of 3D. So they let me slide with a D minus, and I only had two 3D pieces in my entire portfolio. But thankfully, that's where I met Wes and I met CG Cookie, and ever since then, it's been like a dream. So I do want to say I got really lucky. Normally, that's not how it happens right out of school, and uh, that's why I still don't want to give you false hope of like, yeah, right when you get out of school, you'll find your dream job. Because even then with CG Cookie, it wasn't like overnight success. It was definitely one of those where you had to build it up. Like Concept Cookie itself was nothing. They gave me a new website and I had to work with it. And there were a lot of tumbles, a lot of areas where I kind of fell. I would experiment and it wouldn't work. And there are other times where, yeah, it did work. And those successes I tried to play up. And then I it's definitely an error, trial and error. So 4 years later, I'm still working at CG Cookie, and I feel like I'm still learning. And I am wanting you guys to see that no matter what direction you take in with your career, that you're always going to be experimenting and getting better and learning more about yourself. Or who knows, maybe in 5 years I will be doing 3D work. I don't see it happening, but I don't want to just cut it out completely.
People are asking about expressions of eyes. Do you want to tackle that when you start going into cartoony eyes?
Yeah,
Okay. Because I
I'll try
figured,
to finish this a little faster here.
yeah, I figured instead of doing like super detailed
Yeah.
expressions, you could just
Admittedly,
get.
actually, this is something that you guys should know. I'm not that great at doing realism expressions, where I definitely need reference, and it's tough. Like, expressive eyes are really tough without making them look cartoony or over exaggerated. So you definitely have to be careful when you're doing realistic exaggerations, or
Yeah,
not even exaggeration, expressions.
there's tons of like there's chapters in books on just like how the muscle, like what muscles pull what muscles in the face to
Yeah.
make the face do an expression.
So you definitely have to do your studies, do your research.
I
We'll
think
do
my
probably
favorite.
another exercise on that eventually. We did one about 2 years ago, and that actually helped me a lot. But I definitely think another one where we specifically look for certain emotions would be a good one.
Yeah, I think my favorite part of the face is just how much is going on in one specific time, but you don't really notice it unless you're really paying attention to it in someone's face.
Hmm.
Um, EVE asks, can you any tips on how to draw closed eyes?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just finishing up the highlights here. That was such a cool eye, but I feel like I rushed it in some areas. All right. So to do a closed eye, let me switch back to. Okay, so doing a closed eye. I'm trying to think what layer I want to do this on. Okay, so on this eye here, and this one unfortunately will end in 10 minutes, this live stream. Me and Joe have to check out some print house places after, so we gotta kind of work quick. So maybe next week we'll do another extended live stream, but this one I'll try to get through a little quicker here. Okay, so if doing a closed eyelid, first thing is your eyelid generally stays in a roughly same place. So I try not to move that one as much. And the top one, I would typically just draw right over. and that crease definitely lessens. Where there might still be a slight crease to it, that's the reason the crease was there is because it was hiding this pocket of skin in the back. So you can almost just get rid of it completely. And usually this skin is really thin, almost like fragile looking, where you can see some veins too. So I try to break that up. I want it to be completely smooth. Maybe add a few more pinks to give emphasis that the skin is thinner. Yeah, I think that's roughly how it would block in eyes that were close, and then really put focus on these underlying veins here without making it too gross, I guess, depending on the character that you're trying to make. Okay, so then the last thing that I want to talk about, ooh, hello, is expressive eyes. Right, so this is something that I definitely struggle with because usually when I draw my characters, and I get poked fun at a lot for this, they definitely look like emotionless or numb, and that's because like even this eye tends to read as very standard, very like neutral. So if you're trying to do expressive eyes, so let's say we're doing like a shocked face, like, oh my gosh. Usually when I do the eye, I'll place more emphasis on showing the top part of the white of the eye, like really open them up. And like literally when I think of doing expressions, try to break it down into its most simplest form and even over exaggerate it and then pull it down. So like if I was trying to do realistic characters, I would seriously do a crazy sketch like this first, and then as I start blending and adding more detail, then I might like make it more proportional to what it might actually be. And then add more of those realism sightings. And then let's say you were doing this is actually my favorite kind of eye is when someone smiles, and not everyone has this, but if they do, I love drawing this where when they smile really big and their eyes get crinkly, where you can't even see the pupil or the the any part of the eye really at all because they're like folded in because of how happy and expressive they are here. So sometimes you can get away with just doing like a line like that.
I wonder if my eyes do that.
No.
If I'm like, ah.
I don't want to be that guy, but like I definitely look at people's eyes whenever I talk to them and I try to memorize them. Karina has them. Karina has eyes that crinkle up. Let me think of another.
Corona.
You have very almond shaped eyes.
Oh,
But it's really funny where like I have no idea what the rest of your face looks like though. Like if I would be able to draw it, I know you have a pretty pointy chin. But like I have a few friends that like even though eyes are probably the most well known facial features, like one of my friends, she loves noses, and she will be able to tell you what any one of her friends' noses looks like. And it could just because they have an interest in drawing noses or something about them, but the shaping of them, I don't know. But she could tell you what everyone of their noses looked like, but she couldn't even tell you what eye color they have, which I thought was so strange. Where I could tell you the eye color of every single one of my friends, my family, like anyone. I could tell you the eye color, and it's because of maybe how much I'm focusing on them. So maybe test yourself. Really think about what you look on for a facial feature, or if you really even care about facial features in general. Maybe you're an environment artist and you could care less.
all right. This one has plus 11, so I gotta ask it.
All right.
So, hey Tim, I have problems showing life in my characters. After designing the character, I try to set them in a different pose to show their personality, but usually it doesn't come out right. Which fundamental skills should I focus on to improve this?
Their personalities would usually come out right. Uh,
Gesture.
I know, definitely gesture, definitely. I'm trying to think of like for them to show personality. I think it's good definitely having an understanding in your proportion. So Joe's right. Gesture, do a lot of gesture drawing. Do like 50 gestures of your character. And if you kind of run out of ideas of poses, literally just Google image search and be like silhouette poses or something along those lines, and you'll find many that you can copy, but do it for study and really look at the way that they're expressing their poses. And even like I'm trying to think of uh, one thing that my friend told me a long time ago is the way you stand can say a lot about yourself. So I'm going to show the difference between like, hold on here. So like imagine if you're trying to draw a character that's really confident, maybe even cocky, like he borderlines on the arrogant side. You'll definitely show him with his chest out, standing straight. He gives off the impression as very proud. He is someone that stands strong. Now let's say you wanted to do the same character after they learned horrible news. Well, let's say then they might be more slumped over and their arms are seem more heavy. They don't it's more loose. It doesn't read as strong as the first one. And you can see how just slight movements of angling can change number one and number two. Where definitely number two feels more sulken. And I think you really have to think about your character and what emotion are you trying to emit. Sometimes, like if you're working off of fashion studies, that can sometimes be a little misleading because fashion studies are supposed to be like, oh, I don't care, look how nonchalantly I'm looking gorgeous. And with those poses, it's literally for an illustration for a composition. So you gotta be careful with fashion reference. But if you're looking for purely an expressive expression that you want specifically, take pictures of yourself without trying to embarrass myself too much. In college, I did that all the time. Whenever I was trying to draw a new character, I'd be like, okay, I want this character sitting down, but I want their one leg to be closer to the camera and one be like kicked out, and maybe their arms are like holding them back, or they're like holding their body weight forward, but their arms are back like this. To find a specific pose like that might be a little harder online. Now, admittedly, there are new apps and there are programs out there where you can like you're given armature, a 3D armature, and you can kind of pose it yourself. But if you're just kind of on the go and you want something more loose to follow, or if you want specific clothing, take a picture of yourself. Have one of your friends do it if you're not that shy. I mean, you can definitely do it with cameras that have a self timer, or most computers have a camera with like a 3, 2, 1, and then they take the picture. So it's something to think about while you're doing your poses. Okay, so I'm gonna show, or wait, I'm gonna quickly run through any questions that I see. Hello from all the people that we missed earlier that added after. I think for the last question I'm going to answer is what would you suggest to show tiredness or fatigue in the eyes? What I would do is I would have this top line be more slanted down, have this represent that too, and just have more of a saggy appearance. Because I think of it in like a weird way where it's like I think the skin is tired. It's not as tight. It's wanting to be more comfortable, so it's just sagging there. Now, I mean, you definitely don't want to add too much age to them, but definitely with the eyelid itself, the upper eyelid, I would definitely show that, or maybe higher eyebrows where they're just like, I want to go to bed. And like if you ever get really sleepy, when you feel your eyebrows are really like high and you're trying to keep your eyes open, but sometimes they're just like they're slowly falling until finally you're asleep. That's how I would do tiredness or fatigue. Okay, so it's 3:30. Unfortunately, we got to end this off because we got to head out. But I want to thank you guys for coming to this live stream on drawing the eyes. This is my favorite thing to draw, and hopefully you learned maybe something during the stream and be able to use it in your own work. Next week, I think we might do the nose, and then the week after we'll do the mouth, just to give the full facial region, and then maybe the week after the ear, and we'll just kind of work it up from there, I think, because last week we did skin. Might as well cover the entire basis of the head of the character. And then, we did hair too, so once we do these other facial features, then maybe after that we'll do something a little more outside of the box. So the quick announcements is stay tuned for Friday for the Getting Started course, which should be published then. If not, it'll probably be Monday. And then the book reviews, get ready for those. And if you have any suggestions on our book reviews you want to see, like if you're curious about if you want to spend $40 on a particular book but you're not sure, leave it on our Facebook or hit me up on any of the social medias, Tumblr, Twitter, DeviantArt, Instagram, whatever it might be. And I think that's the main announcements I have. Oh, and then, yeah, if you do want to come watch my personal stream of Drawing Red tonight, I will be doing it on my stream on Twitch. I believe the tag is Von Art, no space. And I'll start at 9 Central, so in about 5.5 hours from now. And I'll just draw for an hour and a half and answer any more questions you guys might have. All right, thank you again. Joe, any final word?
Do the exercise this week.
Yes, the exercise is due next Friday. So you have another week and a half, but don't put it off. I just started mine this morning because sometimes it's easier to break it down in a few days rather than try to do it all at once. So me and Joe will both be doing our own master studies, and I really recommend you guys doing yours as well. All right, thanks again for coming, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
See ya.